something considered gone forever, just came back from the edge. They released 3 species on the brink of extinction into the Sahara, and what happened next shocked scientists. In March 2016, a team of rangers stood at the edge of a fenced enclosure deep in the Rimé-Ouadi Achim Reserve in central Chad, watching 21 animals with long, curved horns pace nervously along the fence line. These animals had not touched Saharan sand in over 16 years. The species had been officially declared extinct in the wild since the year 2000, wiped out completely, with every remaining individual living only in zoos and private collections thousands of miles away. Today, for the first time in a generation, they were about to walk free again. Nobody on that team knew if they would survive the week. The information in this video was cross-checked using data from the Sahara Conservation Fund, the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi, the IUCN Species Survival Commission, and field reports published by researchers working directly on the ground in Chad. The Rimé-Ouadi Achim Reserve covers nearly 78,000 square kilometers of central Chad, making it one of the largest protected areas in Africa, roughly the size of Austria. It sits in the Sahelo-Saharan zone, a transition belt between true desert and semi-arid grassland, once home to some of the densest populations of large mammals anywhere in the Sahara. Through the 20th century, civil conflict, uncontrolled hunting from vehicles, and a booming trade in horns for trophies gutted the region. By the 1980s, herds that had once numbered in the tens of thousands had collapsed to isolated stragglers. By 2000, the last confirmed wild scimitar-horned oryx sighting anywhere on Earth had come and gone, and the species existed only behind fences in zoos, descended from a founder population of barely 30 animals captured decades earlier. Bringing a species back from zero in the wild is a different challenge entirely from protecting one that is merely declining. There is no wild population to reinforce, no local herd to learn from. Everything has to be rebuilt from captive stock, tested against a landscape the animals have never actually experienced. Scientists spent nearly a decade selecting genetically diverse founder animals from herds in the United Arab Emirates, quarantining them, fitting them with satellite collars, and running trial releases in fenced pre-release pens to see how the oryx responded to Saharan heat, forage, and predators before ever opening a gate. The first species released was the scimitar-horned oryx itself. Oryx dama, a pale antelope adapted to survive in near waterless terrain, capable of raising its body temperature several degrees above what would kill most mammals just to avoid sweating out precious moisture. Adults can weigh up to 200 kilograms, with ridged horns that curve backward in a shape that gives the species its name. Between 2016 and 2023, more than 500 oryx were released in staged batches, each fitted with GPS collars transmitting location data every few hours. By 2024, satellite tracking confirmed something researchers had barely dared hope for. Over 600 calves had been born to wild, free-ranging mothers, meaning the population was no longer just surviving on released stock. It was reproducing on its own terms, in the wild, for the first time in a quarter century. The second species was the dama gazelle, the tallest and among the most critically endangered gazelles on the planet, with fewer than 500 believed to remain across its entire range in the wild. Reintroduction teams released an initial group of 15 dama gazelles in 2020, monitoring them closely for competition with the already established oryx herds. Early data showed something researchers had not fully anticipated, with dama gazelles and oryx using different vegetation zones almost entirely. The gazelles browsing on acacia shoots at heights the oryx ignored, meaning the two species were not competing for food so much as dividing the landscape between them. The third was the dorcas gazelle, smaller and faster than either of the others, and the only one of the three that had never actually vanished from the wild in Chad. But its numbers had fallen so low that biologists worried it lacked the genetic diversity to recover on its own. Instead of releasing captive animals, teams focused on protecting existing wild dorcas populations from poaching within the reserve, tracking a marked increase in sightings. Surveys recorded roughly triple the number of dorcas gazelle groups within the reserve boundary compared to counts taken a decade earlier. None of this means the story is finished. A 2023 review from the SAHARA Conservation Fund was careful to flag that oryx mortality remains a serious concern outside the strictly protected zone, where poaching pressure and competition with livestock for scarce water sources continue to threaten expansion into the wider Sahel. Researchers are also still studying whether the reintroduced population carries enough genetic diversity to remain healthy over multiple generations, since every animal alive today descends from a founder group smaller than a single wild herd once was. A strikingly similar story is playing out in Tunisia, where the addax, another critically endangered desert antelope, was reintroduced into Bou Hedma National Park after a near-total regional extinction. Tunisian park rangers reported similarly cautious optimism. Small but growing numbers, careful genetic management, and a long road still ahead. Different country, different species, same underlying lesson. Bringing an animal back from zero in the wild takes far longer than releasing it and walking away. What happened in Chad isn't a story about one dramatic release solving centuries of damage. It's a story about a species considered gone from the wild by every scientific definition, rebuilt animal by animal, generation by generation, through nearly a decade of careful, unglamorous groundwork before a single calf was ever born free. The lesson conservationists keep repeating is the same one that shows up again and again in these recovery stories. There's no shortcut, just patience, data, and a willingness to fail quietly for years before anything visible changes.